Well, a very good morning to you all. Excuse me. A very good morning to you all. Welcome to today's forum on the AfCFTA, or the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, as we've come to know it. My name is Maxwell Okello. With us today is Dr. Sotetsi Makong, who's the Head of Technical Assistance and Capacity Building at the AfCFTA Secretariat, and will also be joined later on by Linda Ouma, Senior Trade Officer at the State Department for Trade, Ministry of Investments and Industry. So before we begin, a few housekeeping items. Members, if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A tab, on your screens. Not the chat, the Q&A tab, so that we can track those, and we will be having a Q&A portion after the presentation from Dr. Makong. Two, in terms of run of show and what to expect, after my brief remarks, I will hand over to Dr. Makong, who will take us through a presentation, just giving us updates on both the investment and the digital trade protocol. And we'll also cover other matters that are relevant for you to be aware of with respect to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We will, after that, have a brief Q&A with him before he leaves. And we're really honored to have him with us today, and for him to take his time to be with us. I know he has a hectic schedule and will be traveling immediately after this. So thereafter, as you can see on your screen, we'll have Linda Ouma from the State Department of Trade come in and just give us an update from a Kenya perspective on where we are at and some of the key considerations that we need to take into account. And we hope to close the session at 11 a.m. this morning. So with that, I want us to officially kick off the session. And thank you once more, members, for making time this morning for this very important forum. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area, or the AfCFTA, presents a transformative opportunity for trade and investment across the continent. We are proud to witness Kenya's steadfast commitment to this vision. We've seen ongoing policy reforms and investment into infrastructure that shows us that Kenya is actively positioning itself as a leader in boosting trade efficiency and seizing opportunities of the expanded marketplace, So today's forum will provide valuable insights into the AfCFTA investment protocol, as I've mentioned, and its various business implications. We will also hear critical updates on Kenya's readiness and explore the evolving regulatory frameworks that present new avenues for growth and collaboration under the AfCFTA. The insights from both Dr. Makong and Linda Ouma will help us better understand the opportunities and the challenges ahead as we collectively work to maximize the benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So thank you, members, once again for participating in this forum, and we look forward to your active engagement in what promises to be an enlightening and impactful session. And so with that, I want to formally introduce Dr. Makong. Dr. Sotetsi Makong is the Head of Technical Assistance and Capacity Building at the AfCFTA Secretariat. He is also the Chief Technical Advisor and also covers trade policy and trade negotiations at the AfCFTA Secretariat. Dr. Makong is a seasoned diplomat and expert on multiple subject matters on international trade. He currently serves as the chairperson of UNECA, AFDB, and AU Scientific Committee on Conference on Land Policy in Africa. He previously served as a diplomat and a trade negotiator in Geneva on behalf of the Kingdom of Lesotho, where he severally served as the chief negotiator for African countries. Makong assumed further roles such as chairing WTO committees on TRIMS and import licensing, chief negotiator of UNCTAD, based G77 and China, that is the Geneva chapter. He was also the chief sectoral negotiator of LCDs on non-agricultural market access negotiations, as well as similar capacities on behalf of the WTO-based LDCs and ACP groups. Prior to working in Geneva, he covered multiple regional trade negotiations, including those under the remit of SACU, SADC EPAs, and AU. Makong is currently on the roster of arbitrators under SADC EU EPA. And so with that, I want to yield the screen to Dr. Makong to take it on from here. Dr. Makong, welcome.
Thank you very much, Maxwell, for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. And just to, first of all, thank AmCFTA for getting us to have this engagement, and it's always a pleasure for us to have stakeholder engagement. And I am here on behalf of His Excellency Wamkele Mene, who, of course, always looks forward to these moments where we can actually engage. I'll try to share my slides so that we can get on with business of the day. If you may give me just a moment to do so, and we hum on. All right. So the way I've organized my presentation is for us to first and foremost start with the digital trade, and I'll give you an update and touch on a few things, and then I will touch on the investment aspect. And one of the things that I wish to mention is that I'm currently overseeing the work of the Secretariat, both on digital trade and investment, as well as intellectual property, over and above my role as the Chief Technical Advisor on capacity building. This is what I will cover under the segment on digital trade. And again, let me just say that Kenya is one of those countries in the continent, as you definitely know, that is well advanced, relatively speaking. And there's only about a handful of countries that have been established as making some strides, and Kenya is one of those. Right now, I'm in Abuja, Nigeria. Nigeria is one of those countries as well. And therefore, under this protocol, we definitely know that there are the first movers, and Kenya will be one of those first movers. So this is very, very, very important fact to highlight, hence the importance of this protocol for Kenya as a country. In terms of the status, there had been a decision which was way back in 2020, and this was a recognition of the need to have a protocol on e-commerce at the time, and this was an assembly decision, the African Union Assembly decision. And moving forward, there was the establishment of the Committee on Digital Trade by the AfCFTA Council of Ministers. And then down the line, there has been a series of meetings of the Committee on Digital Trade. And this committee had been put, or rather established, with a view to carrying out negotiations. Of course, it has other functions, but primarily, since its establishment, it has focused its work squarely on negotiations. Of course, the protocol on digital trade being key deliverable of this particular committee. Beyond this committee, the Secretariat and its members, of course, the members here being members of the African Union, we carry out several stakeholder engagements, and these were carried out in the development of the protocol on digital trade. And again, there is also an ad hoc task force on digital trade, and all these elements, they also apply to investment, so I will not repeat them. Just to now give you the essence as to where we are right now, we have the protocol that was adopted, meaning it has been cleared by the Assembly of Heads of State and Governments of the African Union. So today we do have a legal instrument that has been cleared. Now, what then this basically means is that all the annexes, and there's 8 of them that are foreseen in this particular protocol, have to be negotiated. And once the negotiations on the annexes have been done, then the next step will be for countries to start ratifying the protocol on digital trade, meaning it's the protocol together with its annexes that will have to be subjected to respective national processes for those countries that require ratification. So this is very important to highlight. And now I would want to touch on some areas that are covered in the protocol, and I'm sure you may be aware of these, and it's several of them. We have, for example, the issue on market access and treatment of digital products, and here we have rules of origin, we have customs duties, and we have measures on non-discrimination. If I may, if you look at the provision on customs duties under the AfCFTA, customs duties on digital products, these have been prohibited. So it is not allowed, and it is locked in the protocol. You may be aware that at the World Trade Organization, and I spent substantive part of my career covering the work of the World Trade Organization, and as Maxwell had read out, one of the things that we had been engaging in on a biennial basis was the issue of the moratorium on e-commerce. And I'm sure you heard that there is an issue around it, and some countries, including some of the countries being in Africa, have actually said, no, the moratorium has to be lifted, and meaning that countries should be free to impose customs duties on digital products, on digital trade, digital transmissions. And of course, what I'm trying to stress here is to say in the continent, we have actually taken an opposite course where we are saying we will not impose the customs duties on digital products. So this is very important to state. We also have a part 3 of the protocol that covers electronic trust services, electronic authentication, paperless trading, logistics, and last mile delivery, and the rest of what you are seeing here under part 3. And this is a very important issue. And in fact, let me just highlight one of the most important issues of all of what we have here. We have, for example, those 2 concepts there, that is the interoperability and mutual recognition. And what this means is that once the annexes are done in terms of the negotiations, countries will now have to find ways, and there are obligations for countries to make sure that their systems, both in terms of the technical systems, their infrastructure, and their legal systems, are interoperable. Because without interoperability of these systems, digital trade cannot happen. As you know, there are different softwares that countries use, even businesses use, and the issue is that for payments, for example, to move from one country to the other, we need to make sure that the systems are interoperable. And again, countries will have to enter into mutual recognition arrangements. So it's several elements that are covered, and one of these issues that are listed here is digital identities, digital payments, and the protocol dictates that countries must come up with annexes on digital identities as well as digital payments. And again, the key principle here being to ensure that there is interoperability of these systems. There are also provisions on data governance, and again, there is a provision. This is one of those areas that I think if you scan around, you look at some of the countries, including the United States, you look at China, most of these big countries, they are very much reluctant to allow cross-border data transfer. And this is exactly, again, the continent moving in the opposite direction. We have an obligation that enjoins countries to ensure that there is cross-border data transfer, meaning it's a binding obligation. And of course, there are these other flanking, very important obligations around the cross-border data transfer, this covering protection of personal data, location of computing facilities. So the protocol does not mandate the location of facility of computing facility in any other jurisdiction in order for this to happen. So it is open again. And again, there are many other provisions that you can see here on business and consumer trust, issues on source code. The protocol bans a mandatory requirement for access to source code by governments without necessary safeguards. So very important. And again, you can see we are taking an opposite direction here as a continent relative to other advanced countries. There's also measures on digital inclusion. This is very important. We have to make sure that the SMEs and all the women and youth, they are benefiting from this particular protocol. And in fact, if you go to any other African country, over 98% of the market players are small and medium enterprises, or nano small and medium enterprises, and micro and small and medium enterprises. So we have to make sure that this protocol is a tide that lifts all boats, and this is exactly what it does. There are provisions on emerging technologies. There's also other provisions that are standard to the treaties. Now, these are the annexes that are currently under negotiations. One of those is on rules of origin, Annex 1. And this annex is very important because the protocol on digital trade must of necessity be commensurate with the existing other protocols under the AfCFTA. So, for example, we have the protocol on trade and services, we have the protocol on investment, and they dictate who should benefit from the AfCFTA regional continental regime. There's being a preferential trade arrangements, and members felt that it is important to have rules of origin provisions. And again, these are under negotiations. In fact, all of what you have here is under negotiation. So I'll bite my tongue if questions were to come asking me to say more than what I have to say. There is also the annex on digital identities, as I've already mentioned, and a very important annex, I beg your pardon. And here we are talking about both foundational as well as the functional digital identities, and we have to make sure there's interoperability, as I've mentioned. There's also a very important annex without which there cannot be digital trade, and this is a cross-border digital payments annex. And look, the continent is being hemorrhaged, if I may put it that way. It is being hemorrhaged by other jurisdictions. We are losing billions of dollars, literally. Billions of dollars are being lost by the continent simply because of inefficient payment systems, which increase the cost of doing business in the continent. As you know, all the transactions, most of the transactions are routed through the US, they are routed through Europe. And again, the continent loses a lot of money, and including in terms of the remittances within the continent. So this is like billions of dollars that the continent is losing. And of course, it is important, therefore, for Africa to reduce this particular trading cost, which is why one of the initiatives that we have welcomed is PAPS. PAPS has been very much welcomed by us. And again, also, we are seeing the emergence of the regional payments and settlement systems, which can again reduce this particular costs. There's also the annex on cross-border data transfer. And as I've mentioned earlier on, the protocol does allow for cross-border data transfer, and again, so that there are no restrictions to cross-border data transfer. And then again, the annex here sets out the rules. There's also an annex on criteria for determining legitimate and legal public interest for reasons of disclosure of the source code. So there are laws, or rather rules, that have been set out in this particular annex to complement the notion that the protocol prohibits the disclosure of source code without a legitimate cause. Again, one of the key issues, and I think the whole globe is taking this matter very seriously, and I think you can see how the regulators across the globe are beginning to wake up to the fact that the big companies should have a certain modicum of responsibility when it comes to online safety and security. A couple of years ago in my studies, we used to talk about the responsibility of the ISPs. But again, we are not even at that stage. We've gone beyond that, given the seismic shifts and the growth of the big companies. Again, the idea is not to scare off business, but is to make sure that as business is thriving, there's also some sort of obligations on the part of the business to make sure that they also contribute to ensuring that there is safety and security while people are engaging in digital trade. There's also an annex on emerging and advanced technologies, and the whole idea again here is to make sure that the protocol is technology neutral, but at the same time, there has to be some form of understanding as to how these technologies can be leveraged on. And of course, where there are issues, whether it be in terms of safety, again, we have to also look into that. And one of the annexes that are closely linked to Annex 3 on cross-border digital payments is the last one, financial technology, the fintechs, very important. And again, why are they important? They also will reduce a lot of costs that are associated with transacting across the continent. So this is important. And if we can push this, and this is the whole intention, to make sure that the payment systems in terms of the fintechs that we have in the continent can also operate on cross-border basis. So this is where we are. And I'll move on to other things. This being on the protocol on investment, and this is extremely important. Now, of course, we know all the objectives of the AfCFTA. I need not to speak to that, but just to say that similar to the protocol on digital trade, the protocol on investment was also adopted in February by the Assembly of the Heads of States and Governments, and this outcome is very important. And again, the protocol similarly dictates the development of annexes, and therefore, yes, it has been adopted, meaning it has been cleared, the language has been cleared, and again, both of these protocols are now publicly available. You can have access to them, but again, they had this inbuilt agenda where annexes had to be developed, and as we speak right now, we are also having members consulting and engaging in negotiations on the substance of the annexes that have been developed, and of course being subject to negotiations. So well, as you probably have seen maybe some copies of this particular document, but the whole essence of the protocol is to regulate, promote, facilitate, and ensure there's protection of investment at the continental level. As you also are aware, the protocol terminates, or rather enjoins members to terminate their intra-Africa investment treaties, so that there is one continental regime on investment. So this is a very important commitment that you'll have in the protocol. It has specific objectives, of course, key to this being to ensure that there's intra-Africa investment flows. Of course, one of the reasons why we have this hemorrhage of investments out of the continent, it's really about the uncertainty when it comes to the legal infrastructure we have. And again, the protocol goes as far as ensuring that we have a predictable, balanced, and transparent legal and institutional framework in the case of investment. So this is very important. And what this means is that our members will have to put up these legal infrastructure in place. They will have to make sure that the institutions also provide the necessary, they provide the necessary, framework, so to speak. So the framework has to be there, providing the environment. I mean, I wanted to say, providing the conducive environment for investors and their investments. Not only that, the protocol recognizes the importance of having the local communities being factored into the whole balanced system. So they are part of the balance. And again, one of the important issues is to make sure that there is a legal framework for both prevention and management on one side, as well as a settlement of the disputes. One of the things, again, which is why we have this at the continental level, is to incentivize acquisition and transfer of technology in the continent, and of course, making sure that the continent can benefit from its own resources to an extent that the protocol provides a predictable legal framework. So this is very important. The protocol, and Max, you stop me at the right moment, but the protocol, just to say that it has 4 pillars. It is premised on 4 pillars. One is on investment promotion, investment facilitation, investment protection, as well as sustainable development. Why is this important? This is important because the annex itself, the annex to the protocol, begins to expound more on these elements by providing rules in all of these areas. So right now I can tell you that the protocol has 4 chapters, and it comes about, in a way that it brings some innovations across all of these four pillars. So this is very, very important. Again, the protocol does have very significant provisions. Some of these, in terms of the substantive provisions, cover investment provision and promotion, I beg your pardon, as well as facilitation. Also, it provides for investment protection standards, sustainable development related provisions. You'll find them there. There's also investor specific obligations. Again, as I spoke to the notion of for example, the local communities, we do have those investor specific obligations. There's also management and settlement of disputes being one of the key elements. Just to state that the approach that has been taken is that of state to state. So this is very important. And as you are aware, most of countries in the world are moving in that direction of ensuring there is a state to state dispute settlement. However, I should mention, of course, not to disclose what is in the annex, and all of us will have to ask the government of Kenya to engage and provide even further information to you as you are part of the stakeholders who engage with the government. But the point I want to make is that, of course, you may say, how come there's no investor state dispute settlement? I would say that there's a lot of innovations that ensure that there are adequate reliefs that are infused into the protocol. And again, this is something that is subject to negotiations as we speak. So this is very important. But just to highlight that there's a balance that has been sought to make sure that there is, rather, the system serves its purpose, both for the states as well as for the investors. Now, the annex, in terms of its title, it's a long one, it's a mouthful. It's the annex on the rules and procedures for dispute prevention, management, and resolution. And this is very, very important, and you can see the pillars are outlined there. Now, one of the issues that are worth stating, and I, in a sense, touched on this, is that the protocol shifts from the traditional approaches to treaty drafting when it comes to the obligations of states in an investment related treaty, and therefore it seeks to really balance the functions and the substance of it. There's a balance that is inbuilt in there. And again, we also would see that in the same protocol, when you read it, as I've already mentioned, you do have states having very specific obligations on one side, and again there is a balance where again the investors have the obligations as well. So this is very, very, very important. Now, when I'll quickly go through what is covered, and as I take you through this, what's important here is to say that the rules that have been provided for in the protocol, they are being outlined in further details in the annexes. Now, from annex, I beg your pardon, Article 1 to 5 of the protocol, it provides the objectives, it provides definitions, it provides scope of application, It also covers admission of investment as well as denial of benefits. It also goes further to define within these particular articles the quality and nature of investments to be promoted and facilitated. It goes further to cover what is considered substantial business in the host state. And again, this is an issue that our members have come out strongly to say that there has to be a protection, of course, to investors, but that should not be protection that is accorded to the mailbox investors. As you know, this has been a concern, and countries have expressed concern that they have been losing a lot of money, even in cases where the investment is not as substantial. So this is the direction that the protocol takes. It also, again, provides for rules when it comes to predictability and transparency. And again, this is very important in the context of the denial of benefits. Again, this is an issue that you'll find in there. There are also provisions on investment promotion and facilitation, and you'll find them in Chapter 2 of the protocol. And again, these are very important provisions that are favoring the investors. And again, we have to make sure that the investors are favored. So you'll find investment promotion, investment facilitation, and incentives for sustainable investments. It provides for countries to establish the national focal points. There has to be transparency in terms of access to information, and therefore countries have to publish relevant information that, of course, will be useful to facilitate investors and their investments. Now, Article 6 of the protocol, it outlines the actions that, of course, will ensure that we do have investment flows. And one of these provisions provides for Pan-African Trade and Investment Agency, which is quite important because it will be more of an agency that will provide investors with all the information that is actually needed from across the continent. So if you will, it will be also more of a clearinghouse of some sorts where you'll be able to get, or rather, let me put it in these terms, a one-stop shop where you'll be able to get everything you need. And again, there will be some linkages between this agency, which will be under the AfCFTA Secretariat or the AU as it were. But again, what's important here is that you'll be able to have some form of a liaison infrastructure between investors and the state parties. Again, so that, again, providing different options of engagement. So this is very, very important. Now, one of the key elements of the protocol is to ensure that there is not only attraction, but also a retention as well as expansion of investments. And this can only happen if there is a predictable legal environment, regulatory environment for investors. So again, it seeks to move in that particular direction. And again, one of the things is to make sure that there's harmonization of the incentives policies by members. And again, the rest of what you see in this slide. We have a part 3 of the protocol, and this again provides very interesting rules that you'll find in any investment treaty. There's a national treatment. Also, it provides for exceptions to national treatment, the MFN treatment, as well as its exceptions. It also provides measures on the administrative and the judicial treatment, physical protection and security, expropriation, and the rest of these standard provisions that you would normally find in investment treaties, compensation for expropriation, as well as the transfer of funds. So this is very important, and these are the elements that are covered. And again, when you go into the annex, of course, it doesn't go, it doesn't elaborate because these are the standards that you already have. But again, it elaborates on other rules that have been, covered in the protocol. So again, there's several standards that are provided for in part 3. Again, what it does in part 3, the protocol, that is, it rationalizes the scope of treatment as well as provide some legal certainty. Again, it provides for measures on administrative and judicial treatment and clarifies and limits the substantive legal protections. And also there is measures that speak to the physical security, very important. And again, of course, the physical security in as far as the investments are concerned. Of course, there's also expropriation and compensation. All of these, you'll find them in the protocol. There's also sustainable development related issues, very important. And again, this is really something that touches on the investors to make sure that there is responsibilities to make sure that we do preserve our environment, and again the investments are climate friendly. So this is very important, and again this is something that is worth covering. These are the investor obligations.
Dr. McCong, if I can interrupt you, Dr. McCong.
Yes, please.
Yeah, just I'm looking at the time, so if
all right.
I hope you're almost coming to the end, because we'd like
I'm almost coming to the end. I'll speak to this and then we'll be able to engage.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So there's also a set of obligations on investors. Again, there has to be monitoring and ensuring that the investors are compliant with their obligations, and also assurance that international law are basically observed. And again, there is measures on investors in terms of ensuring there's compliance with high standards of business ethics, investment related to human rights related measures, and labor standards are there, a protection of the environment. So these are the kind of obligations that we have in the protocol, as well as the protection of indigenous peoples. Again, the corporate social responsibility, it is also there. So this is very important, and I think I will stop here and look forward to engaging with members. And over to you, Max.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mokong. This is actually quite comprehensive. I must say, not only comprehensive but progressive, as you mentioned. So there are a couple of questions that have come through that I'd like us to take in the next few minutes before we release you. The first question was on the digital, just get it here, on the digital protocol, digital trade protocol, and it was touching on payments. And I'll just read the question verbatim. When are we going to be able to send payments to other African countries in local currency? Yeah, without having to convert to USD. I know this is a thorny one, but happy to hear your thoughts on that.
No, thanks a lot, and I'm glad that you can. We have this question, and I'm seated here in Abuja, as I said, and these are some of the things that we've been discussing. And this is something that our regulators need to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Very important. And however, it is not as simple as we say it. Why? Because beyond the fact that we are losing a lot of money through the exchanges and having to convert to the international convertible currencies, we also have some part to play as countries to make sure that there is a possibility for regulators to collaborate. The same way today, for example, if you take the fintechs, the same way you are able to transact between Kenya and Rwanda through Safaricom on one side, and then you have MTN on the other side, and the same thing is true for Uganda. This has to be across the board, and the question is, how did that happen? It happened because regulators sat together and began to say, this is how we're going to do it from the technology point of view. Not only that, also from the point of view of the regulatory systems. So again, laws have to be changed to allow for that smooth transactions. But again, I'm not a finance person, but I can also tell you that if you are having a macroeconomic challenge, microeconomic challenges, it will be very difficult for our currencies to actually be the basis on which we engage. If you look at what is happening when it comes to the inflation that we are having and how our currencies are basically affected. However, once we are having businesses running, and really being, effectively playing their role in the market, and if I may put this, today in the continent, we have, if I may give you this example, 60% of our food needs are procured from outside of the continent, meaning that we do not have businesses that can actually create, value that would be enough for countries to have the stable economic environment. And therefore, the AfCFTA as a whole, it provides for that. So this is something that, we are working towards, and the protocol on investment, in particular, the annex, it actually recognizes the use of local currencies. And this is a step in the long journey that will take us to having, use of our own currencies.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. That's great. I know this is something that will take time. And as you said, there has to be collaboration between the regulators for this to happen. I just don't see any other way that it would happen. Perhaps maybe related to that, you could just unpack PAPS for us and the ambition behind PAPS.
Yeah, I wish I was working for PAPS, but I'll let you know what I have, what PAPS seeks to achieve. It is exactly to ensure that, one, there's efficiency when it comes to payments across borders, meaning that you may go to your bank to pay someone here in Nigeria, and you could have sometimes the transaction being cleared in 3 days, and it could be cleared even, for example, in 5 days, and sometimes it takes longer than that. But however, PAPS seeks to make sure that the clearance of these transactions, both on the settlement and the payment side, it is done in the shortest time possible. And this is very important. So in real time, close to real time, and here we're talking about minutes and seconds. And therefore, it provides a huge benefit. And we are seeing African commercial banks logging in to PAPS. And again, it reduces costs. And I was informed recently that the cost of transactions between Nigeria and Ghana, because of the usage of PAPS, have gone significantly low, like, let's say as far low as, vendors saving about more than 50% of the cost that they will otherwise pay if they were actually to transact between the commercial banks using the normal channels. So there's a lot of value that PAPS is creating. And again, as you know, we also have other regional payment and settlement systems that are emerging, and a combination of all of these will reduce the cost significantly. So PAPS, I think it's going to really revolutionize how we deal with our payments and settlement regime in the continent.
Okay, well, the other bit in relation to digital trade is the issue of cross-border data flows, but broadly data governance within state parties. And the question here is, how is that being reconciled at a national level vis-a-vis at the AfCFTA level? Are we going to see some harmonization of that? Or is that where now the annexes come in to try and make sure that that happens? If you could just elaborate a little on that.
Thank you very much. And a very important area, just like payments, you don't have digital trade unless data is flowing between countries. And to answer your question, the whole notion of what value does the protocol adds, it actually sets a rule to say there has to be cross-border data transfer. And the annex comes in to provide rules as to under what conditions there would be cross-border data transfer. Okay. Now, one of the things that we do have in this area, for example, if you are having either businesses transacting online, if you are having individuals, consumers transacting online, we have to make sure that their data is secure. There is personal data personal sensitive data, it has to be secure. And therefore, the annex provides the rules. And these rules are basically rules that countries must have in their own countries, in their own legal systems. So if you don't have those rules, you have to introduce them, because if you don't introduce those rules as a country, you will not be in a position to participate in digital trade. It's exactly the similar thing, of course, not similar in the sense of us having the similar regime, but it's exactly the same thing as what happens in Europe, where you have the GDPR. For you to transact, you must have the rules. And again, the state has to provide not only the rules, the institutions that would be relevant in making sure that there is enforcement of those particular rules. Short of that, it will be quite close to impossible for transactions to take place. The other important issue on this is that interoperability, because this data is not only flowing from one device to the other, these are systems. And therefore, the systems through which the data is passing through, they must provide for necessary safeguards in terms of protection of that particular data. Not only the protection of the data, but also as part and parcel of that, there has to be some safeguards that would ensure that indeed one system is interoperable, but in a manner that ensures that the standards are as high as possible to ensure the protection of data. So you cannot have two countries that are having less than optimum systems and less than optimum standards saying they're going to engage. No, the standards have to be very high, and therefore issues of cybersecurity are part and parcel of what you'll have in the whole system to make sure that there is indeed real protection of data. So the protection of this data is very key.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I know we need to let you go. I just have one question, one final question to ask. I'm seeing quite a bit of questions coming through around the AfCFTA's engagement with the youth, right? Given that, you know, the majority of Africa's population is actually quite young, and it's both men and women. So the question here is whether youth, innovation, and tech being seen as a key factor that can boost international trade, Pan-African, inter-Africa trade, excuse me. And so the question is in two parts. One is, what is the thinking around youth and how can we get more youth involved in economic opportunities? And then two, does the AfCFTA actually have grant funding to help catalyze youth in trade and investment? And how, if so, how are those funds accessed?
That's it. Let me start with the last one, because I know that this is something that you know, our young people are itching for us to deliver for them, and this is important. The AfCFTA through the Secretary General has been you know, very much concerned and actively concerned of the plight of our youth, and in so doing, he has been engaging several banks across the continent. I will mention he's engaged with UBA, and recently there will be a launch of a fund by UBA which would cover SMMEs as well as youth. So again, it will be up to you to make sure that you provide yourself some time to make sure that once the fund has been launched, you can have access to it. So this is very important. And also the Secretariat has been engaging with the Zenith Bank as well. Of course, when you say access to funding, this is not a black and white issue.
Yeah.
Funding can be accessed, yes, directly from the financiers, but also the youth can provide services even to big companies. And part of what we are trying to do at the Secretariat is to ensure that the big companies that would be working with us also, they have a huge component that involves the youth. And all of this, if I may say, it is all happening before we can even have the protocols that we are negotiating now, you know, enter into force, if you will, because the protocol on digital trade, yes, it has been adopted by the Assembly, but legally, once the annex negotiations have been concluded, the government of Kenya has to endorse it in the Kenyan Parliament. So once that is done, and we have a good number of countries, a minimum of 22 countries that have passed this through their parliaments, then the laws are going to trigger in and trade will begin to happen in this particular space. But the reason why I'm raising this issue is to say that we are even ahead of that process to make sure that already the youth can actually benefit from the protocol on digital trade. So this is something that we as a secretariat we are placing close to our heart dearly. And there are other, of course, initiatives that we have on the table that are not yet public because they have not yet been finalized. And again, once those are finalized, I'm sure you'll be hearing from us. One of the things that I do at the secretariat is to work on capacity building. And we are in a process of putting in place a capacity building package for the private sector and for the youth, which then, amongst others, will help the young people to know how to build a bankable project, very practical, programs that can help the youth to have access to funding in their own countries. And again, one of the things that this initiative will do is to provide for cross-border matchmaking, because you need to have a platform where you know who can you provide services to. And if you have somebody in Nigeria, how do you know someone in Nigeria needs those services? So we want to make sure that also we have a platform that can allow for matchmaking. And again, the payments are secure. All the partners will be part and parcel of that particular platform. Again, this is the thinking and some of the things that we are working on to make sure that indeed it's not just rules and governments engaging with governments, but again, we have a significant supply component to the work of the secretariat, and this is something that we do. I can go on and on. There's other initiatives on creation of the value chains, and there are opportunities there. And again, these are some of the things that you would have. So I think in a way, in my answer, I probably answered the other part of the question.
Yes.
We are really, really squarely focusing on the youth, and the reason being that we know the continent in terms of the demographics. We have young people. We don't want young people dying in the shores of Europe, trying to chase out opportunities there. We have to create those opportunities here. So the so-called youth bulge, it is actually an opportunity. And the only way in which we can be able to ensure that our young people can also survive, have jobs, it is through creation of this big continental market. If you are having only a small market in Kenya, delinked to the, from the rest of the continent, clearly there can be so many of jobs available in that market. However, through the AfCFTA, we are providing different options where you can provide your services in Tunisia, in other countries, in Lesotho, where I'm from, and many other countries across the continent. So this is really the spirit.
Fantastic. I think on that inspirational note, we will bring your segment to an end, Dr. Makong, and really appreciate your insights, appreciate your time this morning, and we will continue engaging as the AfCFTA protocols and as well as the annexes get rolled out. So thank you very much, and I wish you safe travels.
Thank you very much, and to AMCHA, we appreciate and we'll always be available to engage with you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. So I will bring in Linda Uma, is a senior trade officer at the State Department for Trade in Kenya with over 5 years experience in domestic and international trade. She specializes in driving regional integration agenda, specifically on the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in Kenya, and is passionate, about trade services and women and youth in trade. She holds a degree in entrepreneurship studies from Moi University and has undergone various professional trainings in trade negotiations and policy formulation. She is committed to making meaningful contributions in the fields of trade and gender. Linda, the screen is yours. I know we've run out of time, but if we can just take 10 minutes to hear your updates from a Kenya perspective, and then we will bring the session to a close. Linda, over to you.
Thank you, Maxwell. First of all, let me apologize. George was not able to make it to the meeting, to this session, because he had is traveling, is on transit. Well, I believe Kenya is ready. My apologies, I was in another meeting before I joined this, but at least I can give my insights on the readiness of Kenya to take up the opportunities that the AfCFTA presents. First of all, you know, Kenya was among the first countries that signed and ratified the agreement, and even on the initiatives like the GTI, Kenya was among the countries that were first identified to, were piloted to, selected to pilot the AfCFTA Guided Initiative, the first one of the AfCFTA Guided Initiative. And I hope Mr. Makong gave an overview of the AfCFTA, the main objective, the contribution to GDP, as well as the start of trading and the number of state parties that have signed and ratified the agreement.
Yes.
And all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with respect to the implementation of the AfCFTA, first of all, we developed a national implementation strategy in 2022. And the strategy's main aim is to leverage on the benefits of the AfCFTA, and just to ensure that women, youth, persons living with disability, as well as the private sector, take up the benefits of the AfCFTA. So within the national implementation strategy, we have a national implementation committee that is made up of the private sector, ministries, agencies, and departments. And their work mostly is to, at institutional level, implement the AfCFTA. And within the National Implementation Committee, we have an ad hoc committee that spearheaded the GTI when it was first rolled out. And so far, we've exported tea, we've exported the energy-saving vehicles, we've exported aluminum foils, and other products are still going to the African markets now within the frameworks of the AfCFTA. So the strategy in Kenya, overall, it seeks to increase the exports of Kenya to all the African sub-regions, increase the production and consumption of locally produced goods and services, develop and strengthen the regional value chains, and then also boost Kenya's exports to Africa outside the EAC and the COMESA free trade agreements, as well as boosting services exports. In most cases, we talk about goods, while we forget that there's also services, which is an enabler of trade, trade in goods. And with respect to the protocol on investment, the AfCFTA protocol on investment, the protocol was adopted in February 2023 by the heads of state and government. It aims at promoting and facilitating inter-African investments, protecting investments, harmonizing investment policies, and encouraging suitable development. Now, with that in mind, I believe also when you look at the initiatives that are at the national level, it means that Kenya is already willing to take up once the protocol has been endorsed and at the national level, then Kenya will be ready to just pick it up and align its objectives, align its national laws, its domestic regulations, and start the process. So when you look at some initiatives in the country, like the ACZ programs, we have when you look at the ACZ Act of 2015, that encourages FDI, it positions Kenya as a prominent business hub in the region. So that shows how the current initiatives in the country indicate that the country is ready for the AfCFTA. And then we even have the EPZ programs that catalyze market-oriented investments. Normally, they're designed to promote export-oriented industrialization by offering incentives to attract both local and foreign investment. When you also look at the Kenya Investment Act, the policy provides an overarching framework for coordination of investment promotion and facilitation in the country. Within Kenya Invest, there's also the one-stop center for investment facilitation. Within that one-stop center, you can get all the information that you want. And the AfCFTA encourages the establishment of a one-stop center for investors, for the access of information by investors, all the information that the investors might be looking for. We also have the National Investment Council that seeks to address bottlenecks in investment and ensure there's ease of doing business. Last year, a Biashara platform was launched by our former CS, and the Biashara platform is just to provide information to all traders, all investors, including SMEs and MSMEs, including women, youth. And I would also say that Kenya has a well-established financial and growing financial sector, because we have a number of commercial banks. These will ensure that our investors can access funds. And just one of the positive initiative by the AfCFTA Secretariat, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, we are happy that our central bank joined the PAPS. So then it will make cross-border payments easier for our investors, our traders. And then just looking at the political environment in Kenya, it's usually stable. Most of the time it's stable, except during maybe the election period, but after that it stabilizes. So the climate, the political climate provides a good environment for investments. And then our government also encourages the public-private partnerships. So with that in mind, it's easier for the investors within and outside Africa to come and invest in Kenya. In terms of our ICT, we have a vibrant ICT centers, and we have youths who are so innovative. So again, I believe with the adoption of the protocol on digital trade together with its annexes, our youth will be able to benefit. Because again, we also have an example, we have the Silicon Savannah that makes Kenya a tech home. So having that infrastructure in Kenya then will mean that within the African market, Kenya will be at par with the developing countries, with the developed countries outside Africa, and then this attracts investments. So when you look at AfCFTA, apart from just readiness in terms of the protocol on investment and even digital trade, we find that the AfCFTA has quite a number of protocols, and these protocols are interrelated. An example is the protocol on trading services. And trading services, in a way, it interfaces with digital trade. It also interfaces with the protocol on investment. When you look at trading services, it's applied according to modes. There's mode 1, mode 2, and mode 3. And now for mode 1, it's cross-border digital, it's called cross-border supply. Mode 2 is consumption abroad. Mode 3 is commercial presence. And commercial presence, it's investment, because you have to go to a different country to establish your commercial presence there. Say, for instance, Kenya establishing a subsidiary in Uganda, or Kenya, like the way Equity went to DRC, they went there to establish their commercial presence. So when you look at services, the commitments that Kenya has made at the AfCFTA that indicate that Kenya is ready for trading. First of all, our commitments so far been adopted. And now at country level, we are identifying sectors and countries to trade within the AfCFTA. And these sectors, for the services, it only had 5 priority sectors. We had business sectors, we had communication sector, transport sector, tourism and travel, and financial services sector. So if you want to trade in services, say you want to trade in mode 3, you look at the investment climate, the domestic regulations within that investment environment in a particular country. Like if say DRC wants to come to Kenya to establish a commercial presence, they'll have to go to Kenya Invest, they'll have to look for the information. And it depends on the commitment that Kenya has made. So for the commercial presence, which in a way it's the protocol on investment, it's an investment. When you make commitments, like Kenya has made commitments, it has liberalized most of its, it has made, of course, subject to the existing national laws. And I would say that our domestic regulation is a bit relaxed. So that means then that we are able to attract more investors. When it comes to digital trade, when you look at trading services, again, you look for when you're trading in digital trade, you look for mode 1. Mode 1 is now cross-border, where you trade digitally. We also have digital products, we have digital services. So again, trading services interfaces here. So opportunities for growth in this sector exist for instance, in the ICT services. And the markets for these lies in the liberalization of the commitments that Kenya had made in the EAC, in the COMESA, and even now at the AfCFTA, where now we are ready to start trading. We have our offers on the table. We're ready to start trading with other countries whose offers have also been adopted, because you find that, again, for services, you have to trade on reciprocal basis. So another framework that is also important in the AfCFTA framework that I believe Kenya is really taking an active role in. There's a protocol on women and youth in trade. The protocol on women and youth in trade seeks to just ensure that women and even youth take up the advantages of the AfCFTA. Women and youth trade seamlessly across the border. And it's a protocol that ensures inclusivity. So, and again, you find that most youths engage in digital trading, digital services. So again, the protocol on women and youth, it's kind of linked to digital trading services and also linked to digital to the protocol on digital trade and also to investment. So in a way, the protocols are interrelated. And based on the progress Kenya has made in terms of the negotiations, being at the top of things during the negotiations, it means then that we are communicating what Kenya speaks, and it shows our readiness and commitment to take up this AfCFTA. And of course, by looking at our national AfCFTA implementation strategy, we are able to identify the critical sectors that our investors, our business people, our services people, our youth, our women can take up.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda, for that. I know we are completely out of time, but I just want to ask you one question as we close. If a company, whether local or maybe even foreign, is interested or keen in getting more information or support to understand better the processes, to understand what they need to do to take advantage of the AfCFTA from a Kenyan perspective, where do they get this information? And is your office open to providing that support and information?
Yes, our office is open. The State Department for Trade is the focal ministry for AfCFTA in Kenya. So whenever they want the information, they're free to just contact us. And we are at Teleposta Towers, GPO, 15th floor. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Linda, thank you so much for making time this morning. I know you also had a very hectic schedule and you had to jump from another meeting into this one. We truly appreciate your insights and appreciate you taking time to join us. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of today's forum. Again, appreciate each and every one of you for your participation, for taking time. We will share the presentation from Dr. Makong. We'll circulate that on email. And we look forward to keeping you updated as we keep tracking the AfCFTA and the various protocols as they come to light. So with that, I want to wish everybody a wonderful day ahead and a wonderful weekend. Bye for now. Thank you.